Welcome back, viewers. You're watching WION World is One. This is World DNA, the show that gets you ahead of the rest. I'm Shivan Chandna.
And I'm Hem Korsara. And in the latest in the volatile situation in West Asia, it's a case of detonating pagers that has come to the fore. Militant group Hezbollah has vowed to retaliate against Israel, accusing it of detonating pagers across Lebanon that killed 9 people and wounded around 3,000 others. We'll get you all the details of this on the show today.
Also on World DNA today, we bring you updates on what's happening in Jammu and Kashmir, which is all set for the first phase of the assembly elections, which will cover 24 assembly constituencies across 7 districts of Jammu and Kashmir. The fate of 219 candidates to be determined by over 23.27 lakh voters. We will bring you all the developments on that front as well. Let's get you started with the headlines. This is World DNA.
Lebanon vows to punish Israel after 9 people killed and more than 2,700 wounded in pager explosions across the country. Hezbollah says the pagers were used by its members.
People vote in 24 constituencies across 7 districts in the first phase of elections in India's Jammu and Kashmir. First assembly elections in 10 years.
Bangladesh's interim government grants army magistracy power, eligible officers to serve as executive magistrates.
Taiwan's defense ministry says it has spotted a Chinese aircraft carrier group sailing through waters off its east coast, moving in the direction of Japanese island of Yonaguni.
Venezuela arrests 4th US citizen over an alleged plot to assassinate President Nicolas Maduro, 7th foreign national arrested in the aftermath of the controversial presidential elections.
Sean Diddy Combs pleads not guilty after being charged with racketeering, conspiracy and sex trafficking. Indictment accuses the superstar rapper of engaging in decades of sexual abuse of women.
Bayern Munich kick off their Champions League campaign with a 9-2 rout of Dynamo Zagreb. Harry Kane nets 4 of those to become England's top scorer in the history of the tournament. Militant group Hezbollah has vowed to retaliate against Israel, accusing it of detonating pagers across Lebanon that killed 9 people and wounded around 3,000 others.
And of course, the ones who were wounded, that those include Iran's envoy to Beirut. Now, Lebanese Information Minister Ziad Makari called it an Israeli aggression and condemned the detonation of the pagers. Now, pagers are essentially handheld devices that were mostly used over 2 decades ago, but Hezbollah has still been using them, and they use them in Lebanon to send messages to each other. That's how they communicate. Hezbollah said that Israel will receive its fair punishment for these blasts.
The Israeli military, which has been engaged in cross-border fighting with the Iran-backed Hezbollah since the start of the Gaza war in October, declined to respond to the questions about the detonations. As per reports, a senior Lebanese security claimed that Israel's Mossad spy agency planted a small amount of explosives inside 5,000 Taiwan-made pagers ordered by the Lebanese group months ago.
The Tuesday afternoon blasts hit Hezbollah strongholds across Lebanon and dealt a heavy blow to the militant group. One video even showed a person paying at a grocery store. When a small handheld device placed next to the cashier, it exploded.
The numbers that arrived at the emergency rooms are very big. It is obvious that it was in different areas because we saw injured people arriving at hospitals in the Dahieh and the Beirut areas, as well as injuries in the south, especially in Tyre and the Bekaa areas.
The casualties included Hezbollah fighters, the sons of top officials from the armed group. One of those killed is the son of a Hezbollah member of the Lebanese parliament, Ali Amar. The 10-year-old daughter of a Hezbollah member was killed in Bekaa Valley when his pager exploded.
Now, according to reports, Iran's ambassador to Lebanon, Murtaba Amani, also suffered an injury in the pager blast and was under observation in the hospital. The pagers began to detonate around 3:45 p.m. local time, and explosions continued for about an hour. It was not immediately clear how the devices were detonated.
Meanwhile, the United States has said it was not aware and in advance and has no involvement in the mass explosions of pagers used by Lebanon's Hezbollah.
I can tell you that the U.S. was not involved in it. The U.S. was not aware of this incident in advance, and at this point we're gathering information.
U.S. State Department spokesperson declined to comment on Hezbollah's claims that the blasts were carried out by Israel, though he urged Iran not to take advantage of any incident to raise instability in the West Asian region.
We would urge Iran not to take advantage of any incident, any instability, to try to add further instability and to further increase tensions in the region. That has been our message to Iran since October 7th.
All right, and for more on this, we're now being joined by Professor James A. Russell. He is Associate Professor in the Department of National Security Affairs at NPS. Sir, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, sir, given the recent developments, will the IEDs be more widely used going forward in the ongoing hostilities?
I'm sorry, will what be more widely used?
So the improvised explosive devices that were in the pagers.
Yes. Right. Well, this is a form of warfare that the world has regrettably seen over the last, couple of decades. Really gets it's another version of course, what the United States saw when it entered Iraq and Afghanistan. And of course, regrettably, it became the weapon of choice used against U.S. forces, obviously applied against vehicles. This is somewhat different, of course. But yes, these kinds of weapons have been around for a long time, and they were just deployed in a different kind of way by the apparently by the Israelis. According to reports in the New York Times, it was the Israelis who implanted these explosives in pagers ordered by Hezbollah from Taiwan.
Professor, pagers were essentially used over 20 years ago. It was in the late 90s, early 2000s even. That's essentially when people were most actively using pagers. In today's day and age, to track a shipment of pagers coming into any kind of to any country, and essentially they do come from Taiwan still, it's very easy to track that, okay, these number of pagers are being sent out. And of course, Lebanon being Israel's immediate neighbor, allegedly, Lebanon, they've been claiming that Israel is behind these blasts, but it would not be difficult to track where they are being used. There are many theories regarding how these detonations took place simultaneously. Anything that comes to your mind on how it actually took place?
Well, Israel is in the forefront of cyber warfare kinds of technologies and applications. And of course, this is simply another version of what, again, the United States encounters in Iraq and Afghanistan, in which the insurgents over the course of the wars sort of evolved into increasingly sophisticated ways of detonating the improvised explosive devices. Until it migrated from pressure plates to various things until it was just remote detonation. So this is an example of that, in which the Israelis got inside, apparently, I don't have any direct knowledge of this, but apparently they got into the sort of electronics of how the pagers communicate and hacked into it and were able to program the detonations using this means. So, it's just, again, another example of the weapons that have evolved in this era. And of course, not so interestingly for Hezbollah, of course, is that they were forced into using these pagers, of course, because cell phones,
yes,
they're an open book, basically, for powers that are observing / listening to. In the American wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, cell phones were the number one, sort of device that Americans were able to track for the purposes of conducting targeted assassinations, roundups of insurgent networks.
Yes,
and of course,
it's interesting that they were
this.
forced to not use cell phones, and then they resorted to pagers. And this seems to be in the making, or this seems to have been the plan since many months. Ever since they would have placed the order, it would have come into their hands, it would have been in regular use, and then finally, yesterday became the day when they finally detonated.
Absolutely. And Professor, I also want to understand, the United States has said that it was not aware in advance of it and had no involvement in these mass pager explosions. Now, given how important American support has been for Israel, it's essentially a lifeline. What do you make of the United States' response to this?
Well, I think you have to, this is yet another example, of Israel ignoring American interests and American suggestions. You have to remember that the American envoy was in Israel yesterday, asking the Israelis, of course, or requesting the Israelis do what? Not escalate in Lebanon. So the day after the envoy leaves, what do the Israelis do? They escalate in Lebanon. And so this is, again, just another example of Israel off on its own. It's telling the United States about what it's doing after the fact, presenting us as its main benefactor, with a fait accompli, in effect, all seeking to push the region towards a wider regional war that we in the United States could become involved in. This is a long-running objective of the Likud and of Bibi Netanyahu. So this is just another dangerous escalation by the Israelis that do any of us, or do any of your viewers watching this, think that this attack is going to somehow short circuit or reduce tensions? Of course not. It's designed to continue heighten tensions. And the concluding thought that I would offer to this from the Israelis is they should be careful what they wish for. Here they are attacking civilians and other people in other countries, government officials in other countries. Can any of us think about what the Israeli reaction would be if a bunch of Israelis were suddenly killed by mysterious explosions in their cell phones. The Israelis would go crazy, right? So in other words, they should be careful about all this stuff. They think they're, sort of superior, and that, if this kind of thing can't happen to them. Well, maybe they're underestimating their adversaries. There are lots of countries out there that have always underestimated their adversaries, including the United States.
You get your point.
They should be careful with what they wish for.
Underestimating, and of course, this definitely does not reduce tensions in any measure. And the US has been carrying out rounds after rounds of diplomatic talks to get the two sides to arrive at some kind of a ceasefire. Of course, that doesn't seem to be anywhere close after the recent developments again. Thank you so much for joining in, sir. That was Professor James A. Russell. Always a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you.
All right, we move further from here. Staying on with Lebanon, Lebanon is pointing its finger now towards Israel over the simultaneous pager blasts. However, this is not the first time that Iran and its axis of resistance, or axis of evil as it is called around the world, has blamed Israel of breaching its security.
In 2010, Stuxnet, a malicious computer virus widely believed to be have been developed by the United States and Israel, was used to attack a uranium enrichment facility at Iran's Natanz nuclear site. This was the first publicly known cyber attack of industrial machinery. 2 years later, an Iranian nuclear scientist, Mustafa Ahmadi Roshan, was killed by a bomb placed on his car by a motorcyclist in Tehran. Iran blamed Israel for that attack. In the year 2021, Iran again accused Israel for the assassination of Mohsen Fakhrizadeh, who was seen by Western intelligence services as the mastermind of a covert Iranian program to develop nuclear weapons capability. This year, Israel launched an airstrike killing Hezbollah commander Fuad Shukr in Beirut. This came hours before the assassination of Hamas's political leader Ismail Haniyeh in Iran. Tehran and its axis of resistance holds Israel responsible for the killing of Hamas's chief. Now, as the Ukraine war grinds on with no end in sight, the warnings from Moscow have intensified.
Russia has once again raised the alarm over Western military aid, which goes towards Ukraine, particularly the potential deployment of long-range weapons capable of striking deep into Russian territory, which Ukraine has been desperately pleading for. Here's a complete report. Take a look.
Fighting in Russia's western Kursk region has intensified as Russian forces claim to have retaken 2 villages from Ukrainian control. The Russian military released these fresh images showing how its forces are targeting and destroying Ukrainian troops. Moscow has described the ongoing battles as part of a significant counter-offensive aimed at regaining control over the area where Kyiv launched an incursion a month back. As the situation on the ground remains volatile, Russia has renewed its stern warning to the West regarding the use of long-range weapons. The Kremlin has made it clear that any deep strikes against Russian cities will be met with a powerful response. According to Russian officials, high-impact weapons are already on standby, ready to be deployed if necessary. This warning follows ongoing discussions in the West about potentially expanding military aid to Ukraine, particularly with long-range systems that could target Russian military installations far beyond the front line. In a further show of force, Russia's military has showcased its Yars intercontinental ballistic missile systems, capable of delivering multiple nuclear warheads. These missiles are part of routine patrols aimed at maintaining a constant state of combat readiness. On another front, Russian President Vladimir Putin has ordered an increase in military personnel by 180,000, bringing the total number of troops to 1.5 million. This troop surge would give Russia one of the largest active militaries in the world, second only to China. Amid this rising tension, Ukraine is also bracing for a difficult winter. Russian forces continue to target Ukraine's energy infrastructure, leaving much of the country dependent on its remaining nuclear power plants and energy imports from the European Union. As temperatures drop, the coming months could be some of the harshest Ukraine has faced since the war began. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Myanmar's military junta has escalated the terror tactics, extrajudicial killings and detentions against the civilians in an apparent bid to silence dissent.
Since its rise to power in 2021 by deposing the democratically elected National League for Democracy government led by Aung San Suu Kyi, junta has killed as many as 5,000 civilians. It's arrested tens of thousands to enforce conscription and silence opponent voices.
A report released by the UN Human Rights Office condemned the dehumanization, torture and killing of civilians, saying that under the heavy-handed military rule, an estimated over 5,300 people have lost their lives. Of these, over 2,400 civilians were killed between April 2023 and June 2024, and many were caught in the midst of the airstrikes, shelling and artillery attacks as junta and the rebel forces clashed.
Myanmar's junta arbitrarily detained over 27,400 individuals as a form of reprisal. Of these, more than 9,000 were held in the latest UN reporting period. Many held in detention cells at the military training centers are children. UN report revealed shocking accounts of witnesses subjected to torture during captivity, such as starvation, lack of water, beatings with bamboo sticks and chains, abusive interrogation, suspension from the ceiling, use of snakes and insects to instill fear, and other brutal tactics.
As per the UN Rights Office spokesperson Liz Throssell, at least 1,850 ended up dead in custody, including 88 children and 125 women.
The report also documents the vast scope of detentions undertaken by the military. Nearly 27,400 individuals have been arrested since the coup, with arrests on the rise since the military's implementation of mandatory conscription in February 2024. Credible sources indicate that at least 1,853 have died in custody, including 88 children and 125 women.
The Southeast Asian country has witnessed indiscriminate violence, widespread systemic abuses and killings against the population in the hands of the junta soldiers since the 1st of February coup 3 years ago. United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights Volker Turk says that the deteriorating human rights situation, which is in a free fall, might be referred to the International Criminal Court.
The main accused in the mass rape trial that has shook France has admitted to raping his wife Giselle by recruiting dozens of strangers at a French court on Tuesday.
Dominique Pellicourt said that his wife's refusal to engage in partner swaps, coupled with his trauma in his youth, acted like a trigger for his abusive behavior. According to a report, authorities found 300 pictures of a video and all the acts titled abuse in a folder. Furthermore, one of the accused diagnosed with HIV lied about his health status before raping Giselle.
Dominique Pellicourt, the Frenchman accused of drugging his wife and recruiting dozens of strangers to rape her over nearly a decade, on Tuesday admitted, "I am a rapist." He also begged his family for forgiveness. Dominique Pellicourt, as explained by his lawyer here, had been due to testify last week in a case that has shocked France. But his appearance was delayed due to health issues. He appeared in court with a cane. According to French reporters, Dominique Pellicourt said, "I admit to the charges in their entirety," adding, "I am a rapist just like all the others in this room." His former wife, Giselle Pellicourt, was also in the courtroom. "For 50 years, I lived with a man who I never would have imagined was capable of these acts of rape," she said. Dominique Pellicourt, who was initially arrested after filming up a woman's skirt, faces charges including rape, gang rape, and various privacy breaches by recording and disseminating sexual images. Prosecutors say he offered sex with his former wife Giselle Pellico on a website and filmed the abuse. In addition to Dominique Pellico, 50 other men, currently aged 26 to 73, are also on trial for rape charges in the southern city of Avignon. Some of the other defendants have said they believed Giselle Pellico was pretending to be asleep and had in fact consented to sex, though Dominique Pellico disputed that assertion in the courtroom on Tuesday. If found guilty, the defendants face up to 20 years in jail. Giselle Pellico insisted on a public trial to expose her husband and the other men accused of raping her, and to shed light on sexual violence, her lawyers have said. To many, she has become a symbol of the struggle against sexual violence in France. On Saturday, hundreds of people, mostly women, gathered in cities across the country to demonstrate support for her.
All right, with that, it's time now for a short break.
Don't go anywhere. This is World DNA. Lots more on the other side. When we get back, we'll bring you the complete updates on voting, which has started for the first phase of assembly elections in India's Jammu and Kashmir. The Union Territory is witnessing assembly elections after a period of 10 years.
Sri Lanka is all set to go to polls on the 21st of September. The election marks the first opportunity that citizens will be able to choose their leader after they ousted former President Gotabaya Rajapaksa 2 years ago.
Namaste. Hello friends. We did Dr. Subhash Chandra show, popularly known as DSC show, for 4 years, from August 2014 to August 2018. 28 states of Bharat. Of course, we reached out to all of you in 190 countries across the world. The show was very successful. Each episode was being watched by almost 25 million people every week. For past 6 years, the demand of the show has never died down. People write to us, people ask for the show to restart again. Hence, we are beginning the show once again on All Z Network, also on WION, which is the global network channel from India. Again, thank you for your love and affection. See you soon at Subhash Chandra Show.
To bring the benefits of the Subhash Chandra Show to your educational institution, teachers and students, send an invitation to Juhi Jha at juhi@such.org.in.
Everyone loves a contest. But sport isn't just about victory and defeat. When the GOATs in sport speak, you hear it first on WION.
You have to play good cricket over a period of time.
I actually pushed myself right out of the damn tournament.
We go beyond the stats. Our stories are quoted the world over.
At WION, sport is part of our DNA. Come, join us on this journey. Weekdays 6:30 p.m. IST, 1 p.m. GMT.
Senegal to vote in snap parliamentary elections in mid-November after President Bassirou Diomaye Faye dissolved the opposition-dominated chamber, a move he's banking on to implement his policy agenda. 3 Americans are among 37 people sentenced to death in the Democratic Republic of Congo over what the army says was a coup attempt. A military court handed the sentences to 37 out of 51 defendants, including a Belgian, Briton, and Canadian, all naturalized Congolese. And A vibrant artwork and powerful solo drama Iloya unfolded on stage in Nigeria, shedding light on the realities people face while pursuing their dreams and how they make peace with the outcomes. That's this week on World of Africa at these times on WION. World is One.
Welcome back, viewers. You're watching World DNA with Haim and I'm Shivan. Lots to discuss on this side of the show as well. Let's get you started with the headlines.
People vote in 24 constituencies across 7 districts in the first phase of elections in India's Jammu and Kashmir. First assembly elections in 10 years.
Lebanon vows to punish Israel after 9 people were killed and more than 2,700 were wounded in pager explosions across the country. Hezbollah says the pagers were used by its members.
Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump says he will meet Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi next week. This as President Joe Biden will host leaders from Australia, India and Japan this weekend in Delaware.
Bangladesh's interim government grants army magistracy power, eligible vote officers to serve as executive magistrates.
Sean Diddy Combs pleads not guilty after being charged with racketeering conspiracy and sex trafficking. Indictment accuses the superstar rapper of engaging in decades of sexual abuse of women.
Bayern Munich kick off their Champions League campaign with a 9-2 rout of Dynamo Zagreb. Harry Kane nets 4 of those to become England's top scorer in the history of the tournament.
Voting has started for the first phase of assembly elections in India's Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir.
The Union Territory is witnessing assembly elections after a period of 10 long years. Polling is being held in 24 assembly constituencies. 219 candidates across political parties are contesting the first phase of election in 7 districts of Jammu and Kashmir.
More than 2.3 million voters are eligible to exercise their electoral franchise during the first phase. This includes 566,000 youth voters. Key constituencies of the valley have more than 3,200 polling stations set up ahead of the landmark elections. Phase 1 alone will see the deployment of more than 14,000 polling officials.
Meanwhile, a 3-tier security system has been put in place across the Union Territory, guarding each and every polling booth. There are special polling booths with extra security in areas close to the line of control and international border.
Results of the 3-phase assembly election will be declared on the 8th of October. The polls are the first since Jammu and Kashmir's special status was revoked.
With a diversified political landscape that will witness over 40% candidates contesting as independents, the polls are critical to the valley's stability and security.
All right, for more on this, a special correspondent Idris Loan joins us live from Anantnag. The polls are first since Jammu and Kashmir's special status was revoked, as I mentioned earlier. But also, Idris, to begin with, I wanted to understand what the security arrangements are like. We know that the security situation has been rather volatile in Jammu and Kashmir for the past few months. What can you tell us?
Well, absolutely. Security remains one of the major concerns for the government agencies in Jammu and Kashmir, and that's one of the reasons that we've seen 300 companies, additional companies of paramilitary forces have been brought in from across India to guard the polling stations across Jammu and Kashmir during all the three phases of the assembly elections. The Jammu and Kashmir police as well as the CRPF has been put in place in every polling station. There's a three-tier security system in place, especially on the polling booths which are very close to the line of control and international border. We've also seen South Kashmir, which used to be the hub of militancy in the last few years, has also seen a decrease in the number of violence incidents, and that is because the security has been beefed up all across that region. But what remains of concern for security agencies is the Doda, Kishtwar, Rajouri and Poonch belt, which is very close to the international border and which has seen a lot of militant attacks in the last 3 months. There have been encounters just few days ago in that area where security forces also had to bear some damage. So those are the areas where security has been beefed up a lot, and those are concerns that the security agencies had. But so far, we've seen security forces have the number of security forces on the ground have been increased, and that's one of the reasons that so far we've seen that peaceful polling taking place not only in South Kashmir but also in the region of Kishtwar and Doda as well.
Idris, you're joining us from Anantnag. From what I can gauge from your background, this seems like a children's school. I see a slide behind you, some swings as well. Give us a sense of where you are and what to expect through the course of the day.
Well, Shivam, I'm right now at Bijbihara polling station, which is a school definitely, but this is also the polling station where the Chief Minister Mehbooba Mufti and her daughter, who's a candidate for the first time in the assembly election, will be casting their vote. This is their home constituency where Mehbooba Mufti and her family has been winning the election from around last 15 to 20 years. So this remains one of the most important seats in this election as well, because Mehbooba Mufti this time not participating in the elections, but her daughter is fielded from the same constituency. There are other seats also important in Anantnag district, wherein the former Jammu and Kashmir president of the Indian National Congress, G.M. Mir, is also contesting from Duru constituency. There are some seats in Jammu of the BJP, especially in Doda and Kishtwar, which are important as well. So it remains a very important election because it's happening after 10 long years and a lot of new faces this time in the election. The most interesting part this time was the coalition that is taking place between the political parties. While as on one side there is India Alliance, which consists of National Conference and Congress with some regional local parties. On the other hand, the PDP has decided to go solo, while as the Engineer Rashid's party, which has become a biggest challenge for National Conference and PDP, is the Awami Ittihad party, which has also gone in a pre-poll coalition with the Jamaat-e-Islamiyah, which is a banned organization, but they have also fielded their candidates as independents, and they've gone in pre-poll alliance with the Awami Ittihad party. So it's very interesting that this time it's not only the India Alliance going against BJP, but also National Conference and PDP going against the Awami Ittihad party as well as the Jamaat-e-Islami.
Thank you, Idris, for getting us the latest. Of course, we will be tracking all the developments on ground with you there and getting us the latest. You are currently in Anantnag. Of course, there have been a lot of terror attacks and there have been a lot of encounters which have taken place in this region as well. So the security arrangements are definitely going to be in top view at this point, as you explained earlier. Thank you so much for joining in, and we'll get in touch with you again.
All right, let's shift our focus now. Sri Lanka is all set to go to polls on the 21st of September. And this election marks the first opportunity that citizens will have to choose their leader after the ousted former President Gotabaya Rajapaksa.
Of course, that happened 2 years ago, and now Sri Lanka's main Marxist leader and key presidential hopeful, Anura Kumara Dissanayake, held a rally ahead of the country's crucial polls. The 55-year-old is a former agricultural minister and a vocal anti-corruption campaigner. He blames graft for Sri Lanka's 2022 economic meltdown. Dissanayake and his JVP, or People's Liberation Front, saw a stark rise in their popularity, since the chaos 2 years ago in Sri Lanka, when the South Asian nation of 22 million people ran out of food, fuel and medicines.
He has signalled an ideological shift of the JVP, saying they believe in an open economy and are not totally opposed to privatization. A record 39 presidential aspirants filed nominations for the September 21st election. 38 of them are still in the race. Of these, incumbent Mr. Vikramasinghe, opposition leader Sajid Premadasa and opposition politician Anura Kumara Dissanayake are seen as the front-runners of the polls.
The interim government in Bangladesh has granted the Bangladesh Army the authority of special executive magistrates across the country.
Now, the Ministry of Public Administration announced that the commissioned officers of the Army have been given executive magistrate powers for a period of 60 days.
According to the Gazette notification issued by the ministry, eligible army officers will serve as executive magistrates under the supervision of district magistrates nationwide. Bangladesh has seen a rise in incidents of violence across the country since the ouster of former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina.
Meanwhile, thousands of activists and leaders of the opposition Bangladesh Nationalist Party on Tuesday rallied in the nation's capital to demand a democratic transition through an election. The supporters gathered in front of the BNP headquarters in Dhaka, where they chanted slogans demanding a new election.
The interim government, headed by Nobel laureate Muhammad Yunus, has yet to outline a time frame for the new polls. Yunus took the helm after former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina was forced to flee the country during a mass uprising last month, ending a 15-year spell in power. In his recent speeches, Yunus hasn't outlined when a new national election would be held and said they would stay in power as long as the people want them to stay.
All right, let's now take a look at developments from the world of technology. According to a report by Dr. Webb, a France-based cybersecurity company, hackers have infected over 1.3 million Android-based TV boxes across 197 countries. The malware, known as Android.void, acts as a backdoor, allowing threat actors to secretly download and install unwanted software on your device, leaving it vulnerable to various threats. The largest number of infections have been detected in Brazil, Morocco, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Russia, Malaysia and Algeria. The malware takes advantage of TVs with outdated Android versions which are no longer supported by security updates. Our advice: check your TV settings and see if the software is updated. If not, install updates immediately.
Instagram has announced its most dramatic effort to protect young users from online danger. The company is calling the feature Teen Accounts. Meta will now automatically designate users under 18 as teen accounts, and this will apply to both newly made accounts as well as existing ones. The teen account settings will automatically make millions of teen accounts private and restrict the kind of content young users view on the app. young users will have more restrictive settings, such as who can message them, who can comment on their posts, and what kind of sensitive content is recommended in Reels and on the Explore page. And for parents who worry about the amount of time their kid spends on Instagram, there's something for the parents as well. The teen account will send alerts reminding teens to take breaks from the app. Now, that's not all. Of course, they're doing more than that. Instagram teen account will also include a sleep mode that silences notifications from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. Teens under the age of 16 will need parental permission to opt out of these restrictive settings, while children between 16 and 17 will be able to change the settings on their own, unless a parent has already signed on to the platform's parental controls.
According to new research by Insurance Institute for Highway Safety, people who drive vehicles with partial automation systems are more likely to engage in non-driving activities, such as checking their phones or eating a sandwich while driving. The safety group conducted months-long studies with Tesla's Autopilot and Volvo's Pilot Assist to examine driver behavior when the technology was in use and how drivers' behavior evolved with time. Partial automation system uses cameras, sensors and software to regulate the speed and the position of the car based on other vehicles on the road. Drivers, however, are required to continuously monitor the road and be ready to take over at any time, with most systems needing them to keep their hands on the wheel. With major automakers in a race to deploy autonomous driving technology, the research indicates the need for better safeguards to ensure attentive driving.
Next up, let's look at the economic fallout from heavy rains across West African countries. According to assessments made by 4 nations, the floods in West Africa have wiped out crops in an area that is already struggling with food shortages.
And of course, they're struggling with instability, displacing at least 2.4 million people and killing around 1,000. Researchers are blaming global warming for this year's flood, which happens to coincide with the critical crop season. There is little funding to protect infrastructure from bad weather in West Africa, and the region is among the least equipped in the world for climate-related catastrophes. The Notre Dame Global Adaptive Initiative ranked 187 nations for their susceptibility to climate change. Chad ranked worst, Mali 188th, Niger 176, and Nigeria 152nd.
According to Tahir Hamid, Chad's finance minister and head of the Flooding Prevention Committee, the situation is unprecedented, particularly in the northern half of the nation, which is mostly desert. The finance minister added the output of millet, maize, sorghum and rice has been impacted.
Spokesperson for the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs said, with flooded farmland and drowned livestock, there will be a lot less food available now and in the future in a country where 3.4 million people already face acute hunger, the highest level of food insecurity ever recorded in Chad.
The wet weather in Western Africa coincides with torrential rains in European nations, which include Poland, Austria and Germany, that have left several people dead. According to the governments of Mali and neighboring Niger, as transportation routes to markets in Niger become inaccessible, food prices are on the rise.
A farmer in Niger's Agadez region said, I'm quoting, I've never seen rain like this. It's too soon to say how much of the harvest was destroyed, but I fear it will be bad. And China continues to dominate critical industries despite continued efforts by the United States, from a breakthrough in chip-making technology to its stronghold on the rare earths market.
Well, the West is struggling to catch up with China's critical might here. Take a look at this next report for more.
China has announced a significant advancement in its semiconductor technology with the development of a new laser-based immersion lithography machine. This new equipment achieves a resolution of 65 nanometers, a notable improvement from the previous 90 nanometers. The resolution of lithography machines is crucial for chip making as it determines how finely integrated circuits can be printed silicon wafers. Current leading technology from ASML has a resolution of around 8 nanometers. Despite these advancements, Chinese companies are still working to close the gap with global leaders like ASML, especially given the US sanctions that have restricted access to advanced semiconductor equipment. While China's advancement in chip making are impressive, another critical element in high technology manufacturing is the rare earth minerals. These elements are essential for producing a wide range of electronic components, from smartphones to electric vehicles. China currently dominates the global supply of rare earths, controlling approximately 70% of output and more than 90% of refining. The US and its allies have recognized the strategic importance of rare earths and are working to reduce their dependence on China. However, recent price declines and increased supply have raised concerns about the viability. Efforts such as the Lynas rare earth processing plant in Texas face challenges, including a slump in prices and higher than expected costs. The Mountain Pass mine in California and other ventures are struggling with economic hurdles. This illustrates the difficulties in developing a competitive alternative to China's entrenched market presence in key critical industries. Business Bureau Report, WION The World.
The Champions League football kicked off with a brand new format. It was a goal fest on day one of the action. We get you all the big results here.
Now, defending champions Real Madrid began their title defense with a 3-1 win over German side Stuttgart at Santiago.